We will be recording this and adding it to YouTube later on if you want to review it. So don't be shy to ask questions. Whatever you need, you'll be able to watch it over again. One sec. My Zoom bar is in the way. There we go. All participants will have their audio and video turned off during the webinar. If you'd like to ask a question, like I mentioned, please use the Q&A and the chat feature at the bottom of the screen. I'll be monitoring that. And we have some questions that we've already received. We've also have some prepared, but if you think of any, feel free. As well, if you think of anything after the webinar that wasn't mentioned here, I'll have our contact information at the end, and we are happy to answer any questions you have via email anytime. You can ask questions throughout the session. We'll get to them as we can. So don't be shy. Talk a little bit about Perennia first. So Perennia Food and Agriculture Corporation has been around in various different iterations for I think about 20 years now. And our mission is to support the growth, transformation, and economic development in Nova Scotia's agriculture, seafood, cannabis, and food and beverage sectors. So we have lots of different departments, including agriculture, product development, cannabis, fisheries, and our quality and food safety team, which you will hear from today. Shelly MacDonald is our co-manager of quality and food safety. She develops and facilitates quality and food safety training. She is our lead trainer here at Perennia. So if you've ever done a training of any kind, you'll likely have heard from her before. She's very passionate about educating clients and knowledge transfer. She also helps clients with navigating food safety regulatory requirements and third-party certifications. Shelly.
Hi, everyone.
And Elaine Grant, our other co-manager of quality and food safety. She coaches clients in developing and implementing customized food safety and quality programs, as well as identifying overall process and production efficiencies with the goal of creating plans that are practical, approachable, easily maintained, that can be implemented by teams, managed throughout the growth of the operation. So, there's Elaine.
Hi, everybody.
We do a lot here at Perennia. These are just a couple of the things that Elaine and Shelly do. Like I mentioned, we have a few different departments work in agri services, product development, quality and food safety, seafood services. So if ever you have a product that you're looking at developing or need help with improving, let's say, or want to test the shelf life or want to improve your facility's food safety culture, really anything that has to do with food development, I mean, we can help or we can find someone who can help. So here's a list of some of our services. You can always find more on our website, and by contacting us directly, we can help find the right service for you for sure. Oh, let's get started. Elaine and Shelly, do you want to get started?
Sounds good. Thanks, Carolyn. Welcome, everyone. So the purpose of this webinar today is many folks come to us saying that their customers are asking for a food safety program or a certification, and they're not quite sure what this means or what their customers looking for. And also they are now looking to expand their business to other markets or start exporting. So they're not quite sure where to start. So that's going to be the purpose of today's webinar. And hopefully we'll be able to answer all the questions that you've submitted or any that you plan to submit during the webinar.
Yeah, it's probably the most frequently asked question is, what do I need? Or I want to get into a market. So we really wanted to address this in a webinar. And yeah, like Shelly said, if you have any questions, pop them in or contact us after.
So, one of the most important things to remember when it comes to developing a written food safety program are three things: say what you do what you say, and prove it. So, for example, you may already be doing all of the things at your facility. You may have a sanitation program where you're doing your cleaning and your sanitizing. However, you are not recording those things, or you don't have written procedures in place, or sanitation standard operating procedures. So, when it is time to develop and implement a food safety program, this is when you need to have those things written out. It's one thing to do them, but you have to have those written documentations for consistency purposes so that everybody's doing the same thing each and every time. Do you have anything to add, Elaine?
Yeah.
No, I think you nailed it, actually. And it's a development piece. People go out and get their licenses or sign up for an audit, and then they fail it miserably or don't have a very good experience with inspectors because they just haven't written things down. And it's like, well, we do it, and it's like, you have to prove it. Everybody wants to take everybody's word for it, but when it comes to food safety, you need the documentation. So, yeah.
Right. It's really, really important. You don't want anyone to get sick, or, that's kind of the crux of the matter. So you have both developed a lot of food safety programs over the course of your careers. Maybe you could explain a little bit about what are some experiences you've had developing, and what are some like really difficult experiences you've had developing food safety programs over the course of your careers.
I can go first on this one. I don't know about anybody out there, but developing a third-party certification without any kind of training is not a party. It can be done if you can research and look into things, but having those implementation courses is really important. And I didn't realize that so much until after I signed on with AgriPoint Perennia. Once you get the implementation course, it just makes things so much easier. Or any kind of introductory course on a standard, or even just basic HACCP training, like HACCP developing and HACCP plan PCP development. It makes a huge difference before you even start. So that's really the first place you should start, is the training.
I agree. The same for me. So it's resources, no matter what kind of resources. Like Elaine said, training, that's a type of resource. People, another type of resource, and time. So when you start to develop a program, it does take time. It takes people. It takes a team. It takes training if you do not have that previous qualifications, and you're not familiar with the new standard, that you're going to say you have a preventive control plan in place that meets CFIA, but now all of a sudden you need a GFSI program. So the Global Food Safety Initiative certifications, and it's BRCGS or it's SQF, and you have no idea where to start. You need to learn those standards first before you can start, and having some training is going to be very helpful.
Great, thank you. So going into our participant questions, and I think this is a good segue. Like you said, there's lots of different standards out there. There's lots of different certifications, and each have their own unique requirements and training. So one question that we received was, what certificate do I need? And I guess to go with that, like how do you determine what you need and how to get there?
Ultimately, this is dependent on your customer. So usually your customer comes to you and says, we need you to have third-party certification, or in order for us to continue doing business with you, you need to have a GFSI certification. So not everybody understands the difference between regulatory requirements, third-party certifications, as well as GFSI certifications. So ask your customer, what is it that they are looking for? What do they expect of you? Is when they say a third-party certification, is that a third-party certification where you can go to any certification body and have, say, a GMP, a good manufacturing practices audit, or a HACCP certification audit? Or are they looking for the GFSI? And is it a specific standard they want, SQF versus BRCGS? So it is really important to ask them and clarify what program they expect of you. And then, of course, do your research. Know the differences with the standards and what's going to work for your company and the size of your company and the resources that you already have on hand.
And if you haven't been talking to your customer, you don't have a customer yet, but you know you want to get into Costco, or I'd really like to see my products in Sobeys, you need to reach out. And every retailer has a website where they want, do you want to be a vendor? So you click on that and you go through those steps or contact them and tell them what your product is and what you're interested in doing. For a lot of people, they might start with the federal licensing, because to be able to sell to these retailers, they want you to be able to ship out of the province, right? They want that quantity and an amount of ingredients or products that you sell. They want to be able to ship it out of the province, just not Nova Scotia. So that's a really good place to start too, if you're not sure where to begin, or if you're not quite there, look into being compliant with CFA.
Thank you. How do you deal with two different auditors that would have, say, two different interpretations of the SQF code? One of the questions we received was that they have received two different non-conformances in regard to the same item of the code, so could be a little confusing.
That may be something we may have to talk about online. We can make some assumptions here because we have had clients and inquiries that have come in that have had a similar type issue. It could go one of two ways. The certification bodies and the audit standards do require auditors to do training on a regular basis. It's quite extensive for a lot of the third-party GFSI type certifications. So it's required annually to be calibrated. They do bring along people from the certification body to make sure that, kind of like a ride-along kind of thing, where they bring somebody in and they watch them do the audit. And a lot of these audit reports, I think pretty much all of them, are vetted by a reviewer who's independent and is able to flag a lot of this stuff. So it could be just maybe not a calibration, maybe a different interpretation. The other thing it could be is, maybe your root cause wasn't good for the first one. It popped up again if it's a repeat issue. Yeah, that would be my thoughts on that.
I just want to add that keep in mind the audit is a two-way street, meaning yes, the auditor is going to be the one asking the majority of the questions, but you are also able to ask questions. So anytime you are not clear or you are questioning something, don't be afraid to have that conversation with your auditor. Communication is where a lot of the times things fail because people make assumptions or they won't come out and they won't ask those questions for clarification. So if you're not sure of something, ask the auditor, get them to show you where in the standard or where in that clause they're coming from. And like Elaine said, auditors do go through a calibration process, but we are people at the end of the day. So there is a little bit of differences in interpretation, but we can definitely have a conversation offline with the person who submitted this to get a little bit more information, because we do need a little bit more to be able to answer this more clearly.
Yeah, great answer. I mean, auditors are people and they want you to have the safest product possible, just like you do. So it makes total sense that communication is key. So what if someone is doing all the things that they should be doing? So sanitation training, traceability, pest control, all those things, but maybe they're not documenting it or the documentation is not up to par. Where would be the best place to start?
So like we mentioned at the beginning, it's the three things. It's saying what you do what you say, and proving it. So it's great that you're doing all of the things. However, without having the written procedures and the practices in place and the policies in place, there's not going to be consistency within what everybody's doing in your facility. So start with what you know. If you already have a pest control, say you already have a third-party pest control program in place. Well, that's the beginning of having a written pest control program. If that program needs to meet, say, regulatory requirements or SQF certification, go to the manual and see where you are meeting and where you need to fill in those gaps. So you have the beginning of it, but now you have to write down exactly what you're doing. Is it internal pest control? Is it a contracted service provider? And then, of course, if that's where you're going to start, you want to meet with your pest control provider as well to let them know that, you now need to meet this certification or this regulatory requirement. So we need to ensure that we are meeting all of these boxes.
I like to start with my favorite parts. So the things I enjoy or know the most about. So for me, it's maintenance. I don't know why. When I develop a program, I always start with maintenance. Another good one to start with is hygiene. Usually they're quick, fast things to write down. Or maybe it's your sampling. Maybe you do all the swabs. So environmental monitoring is where you're going to start. Just if you pick one a day or one a week, you're still a lot farther ahead than if you hadn't started at all. So yeah, you just kind of have to do it.
Great answers. I never knew maintenance was a safety program, Elaine. Here's another question. Oh, and I want to mention, if somebody does have questions or anything comes to their mind, please feel free to enter them in the chat or Q&A in the Zoom, and we will get to them. I am the HACCP coordinator for our facility, but I wear many hats. I know I need a written program, but I'm unable to find the time to do it. How do I make time to develop and implement a food safety program? Oh, big one.
If this is you, you are not alone. We hear this a lot. The thing is, though, you must make the time to prioritize and make the food safety management program a commitment. So it is no different than production and pumping out volume. It's no different if you're responsible for administration at your facility. You still have to take the time to do the admin work or the payroll. So you have to set the time aside to develop these programs and to implement these programs. So what you also need to keep in mind is this is not one person's responsibility. This is a company-wide commitment, and it takes a team to develop these programs and implement them. So like Elaine said, her favorite place to start is maintenance. Elaine's going to go in and work with a client and she's going to know a bit about maintenance, but she's not going to be the expert at that facility. And even if she did work at that facility, but she wasn't part of the maintenance team, maintenance is the boots on the ground and the experts in that subject matter. So go to those folks and get their input.
Some of the best resources you can get besides food safety ones online are the people on the floor. So they're the ones that are going to have to fill out those records that you've created behind the desk, and things that might seem really good in theory are 100% do not work. Pick these people's brains, get their information, and it ultimately gives you buy-in. So with quality, it's not a department. Like Shelly said, it's a company-wide commitment. And if you have to write that down in a post-it note to remind yourself to go out on the floor and chat with everybody that's working with you, do it.
People are more likely to follow these programs and to help when they're involved. So again, it's about letting folks know what's going on, get their input. They are the ones doing it day in and day out. So use them, trust those employees to help you with developing these programs.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Here's another question. A retailer is interested in my products and is asking for a federal license or a HACCP food safety audit. What does that even mean?
That's your Safe Food for Canadians regulations that you need to follow. That's your license, right? And you can't just have the license, you got to have the documentation behind it.
Yeah, so this is a big one. We have some retailers out there and it will say, a federal license or a third-party certification. So folks will say, well, what does that mean? Well, if it says a federal license, like Elaine said, a federal license is your SFC license, your Safe Food for Canadian license, which is issued by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And then, of course, if you're importing, exporting, or sending your product outside of your home province, you're going to require that license. And then, of course, when it comes to a HACCP or a food safety certification, this is when it's an audit that's conducted by a certification body. So after the certification body completes their audit, if you've been successful and had a successful audit, they will issue you a certificate that will say it could be a good manufacturing practice certification, it could be a HACCP certification audit. It just depends on which audit you're having. If you're a distribution center, then it's going to be a good distribution practice certification.
All right, we received 2 questions. I'll start with 3 questions. Awesome. Start with the first one. What type of insurance is necessary for food products and how do you go about purchasing that?
I don't know if we can comment on insurance, necessarily, because unless that's not what they meant by that word. There would be business insurance and that kind of thing that I think people would look for manufacturing or even farm. I believe there's ones that are available through farm industry commodities. Or do
Yes.
they make supplier assurance?
Insurance, I believe.
They say insurance?
Insurance, yeah.
Okay.
So I guess
Supplier assurance is what I'm thinking, Shelley, like a supplier assurance type, you know, the form that you can get on CFA's website.
I'm gonna type Shelly and Elaine's email in the chat. So if this person wants to chat more specifically about the question, feel free to send them a message because there you go. How do I ensure compliance with a CFIA rules for food related products?
So that's a great question. And it's going to depend on your commodity and the activities happening at your facility. So the first thing to do would be to go to the CFIA website, look at the timetable for different commodities, and I think we will talk about that later on. But it's all going to depend on the activities you're doing. Are you processing? Are you labeling? Are you treating the product? Are you solely exporting the product? Are you selling the product at retail? So based on those things, you may have to meet all 4. And what those 4 things are for CFIA, Safe Food for Canadians, is 1, it's that Safe Food for Canadian license. So again, the scope is importing, exporting, or interprovincial trade. Then you have your preventive controls. So when we're talking about preventive controls, these are no different than prerequisite programs or good manufacturing practices. It's your sanitation, your pest control, your maintenance, your calibration program, your training, your mock recall, your recall and traceability, and I can go on and on and on. And then traceability is one of the 4. And then a PCP, which is a preventive control plan, which that is equal to a HACCP plan. So you may not be required to do all 4 things. Depending on your commodity and the activity that you're doing, you may be required to have a Safe Food for Canadian license and a traceability only. Or you may be required to have a Safe Food for Canadian license, a traceability, and preventive controls only. Or you may need to have all 4. So I can't comment more on that without knowing the specifics of your commodity and the activities that you are performing at your facility.
This question is kind of bouncing off that. Are there different regulations for importing and exporting across provinces? So like selling within province, say you have a product in Nova Scotia, you want to sell it to Ontario. Are there different regulations? How do you manage that?
That's primarily the Safe Food for Canadians requirements, or regulations that you would need to follow. there's different aspects of it that apply to certain commodities, like grades for produce. And what people would need would depend on the timelines, which you can bring up a little later. Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that one, except that it's all safe food for Canadians, and it really depends on what you're moving between the provinces and your business.
Yeah, and I guess depends which business you're selling to, because they would have different regulations and requirements as well, right?
Well, yeah, it depends on what business it is and where product's going and that kind of thing, so, yeah.
How do I report customs violations or discrepancies?
I myself cannot comment on that. That's outside of my wheelhouse.
Yeah, I think there must be something with CFA, possibly. They would have a report of violation, maybe aspect you could do. We can make a note of that and maybe send that out. We're going to send questions and answers or any kind of resources after this webinar, so keep an eye on your inbox for that information.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm gonna move on to some more questions about food safety programs specifically. So if we have other questions about food safety programs, please send them in. I've been asked to provide a HACCP plan, so how do I get a HACCP plan, and is it really required?
If your customer is asking you for a HACCP plan, then absolutely you're going to have a HACCP plan. If you have a Safe Food for Canadian license, again, depending on your commodity and the activities that you're doing, you may be required to have a HACCP plan. Any third-party certification is going to require you to have a HACCP plan, as well as a GFSI. So most folks don't realize, but all these food safety programs out there are HACCP-based programs. So part of it is your prerequisite programs, and the other part of your food safety program is your HACCP plan. One thing to keep in mind, HACCP plans are product and process specific, meaning they must be tailored. You cannot go online and download a template of a HACCP plan and stick it in your program and it be yours without you actually going through the motions to see whether or not this is exactly what you're doing at your facility. And just because, let's say you're a blueberry juice processor, your neighbor or another person that you know of owns a blueberry processing facility, processing facility, doesn't mean you can take their program and use it as your own, because that's not how these work at all. Everybody's processes and systems are going to differ depending on the facility, the equipment that you have in place, your water sources that you're using, the packaging material you're bringing in, the ingredients, the traffic flow, the layout of your facility. So all of these things are going to be different from facility to facility.
Yeah, so if you have a co-packer who's making your product that you decide to make it on your own, you can't take their program and make it your own. I mean, it's probably a good starting point if they give it to you for your product, but you're definitely going to have to go through it all and change it and update it.
And before we move on, Carolyn, I just want to add something that I meant to add when we first started. So we asked that question about which certification is best for me, or which program should I choose. Just because, let's say, again, use the blueberry juice processor as an example. Just because another facility has BRC doesn't mean that the BRCGS certification is going to be meant for your facility. So it will be based on your customer, but if you're being proactive, do the research. Just because another facility that's similar to yours has this certification doesn't mean this is the one that's going to be right for you.
Well, that's great, because our next question is, there are so many food safety program options. how do you know which is best for your company?
It's really kind of market dependent. And what we in Nova Scotia, even New Brunswick, there's a lot of older buildings. So one standard may not be work well as per another one. You know, I find I don't even want to recommend this, but SQF, I'm going to say it. A lot of people tend to go SQF because it's a little bit more flexible. And like Shelly said, you don't, just because your neighbor is a blueberry packer, producer, whatever, went BRC, it doesn't mean you have to. Because the global initiatives, SQF is one. That's an option. I mean, you can choose whatever, really, as long as your customer will accept it, which if it's a global food safety certification, they should accept it. Yeah, everybody's different, and you need to make it work for you.
Yeah, exactly. Like Elaine mentioned, it needs to work for you, and it needs to be something that can grow with you as your business grows as well. So it needs to make sense for what you're doing and the resources that you have.
And if you already have, if you're already federally licensed and you have your Safe Food for Canadians all documented, or you're starting that documentation, but know that in the next couple of years you want to have a global food safety certification, you should really look ahead to see if you can tweak a few things as you're doing it now. And it will make your life a lot easier when you actually go to implement that in a few years. Like, keep in mind your 5 years of growth, right? Where do you want to be? What markets require? Maybe you want to export. What kind of advantages does it kind of give you? And, and have that, if you're at a large facility, have that discussion with everybody at the table and kind of see where sales and marketing is going, just to kind of get ahead of the 8 ball there.
That's a good point. When you say that, quality and food safety is a whole team initiative, that also includes the admin, the sales, the marketing, the HR, all of it, right?
Company-wide commitment. It's a team effort.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Do you need to have a program developed before applying for a Safe Food for Canadians license?
What a great question. Okay, so when you go into my CFIA and you apply for your Safe Food for Canadian license, there's going to be a little question at the bottom of that says, do you have a PCP, a preventive control plan? As soon as you tick that box, you are attesting that you have a written food safety program. So when we say written, it's not you're doing all the things, but you also have it written of all the things that you're doing. And you have the records to prove that you're doing it. So again, it takes us back to the say what you do what you say, and prove it. So as soon as you hit that submit button and it goes through all the admins of CFIA, they may say to you, before they issue you that license, provide us with your preventive control plan. And if you cannot provide them with the preventive control plan, you are not going to be issued your Safe Food for Canadian license. So we always tell our clients, make sure you have that program developed and implemented before you go on there and apply for your Safe Food for Canadian license.
Because they could show up and look for it, and you can't develop it overnight. I mean, you can try, but you're not going to succeed at that. That's a big program. You can't do it. But I see it. I see increased traffic on the MyCFA website now because I think everybody's going to go back and see what they actually did. But it is a good idea to go in there from time to time, just make sure everything's accurate and nothing has changed, because you don't want to get caught in the car.
And again, keep in mind, based on what I mentioned earlier, it's going to be dependent on your commodity and the activities that you're doing. So you might not have to have all 4 things, that PCP, the preventive controls, and the traceability, and the license. You may only have to have the license and the traceability. So it's important for you to understand your requirements when you are applying for these things.
Yeah. I've
So-
opened up I've opened up the CFIA, the timelines and key requirements page, and they do have like interactive tools. They want you to be able to do this, right? They want you to they want you to have these plans in place, and they give you the tools to help you do it.
They do, and there's a lot of good videos on here and resources as well that CFIA has posted. If any time you can't find it, please reach out and we can help you find the spot you need to go. The timetables really do help you determine, and it is very business specific. It's not just based on what you produce and where you sell it, it's really the size of your business as well. So it's really key to visit those tools and those timetables and determine what's really required. Yeah.
So I'm sure that you are all in the chat.
Thanks. Yeah, Carolyn popped it in the chat, and I think we're going to send a bunch of these links.
Yeah,
tomorrow
absolutely.
To Shelly before the Christmas. Yeah.
Got a few other questions. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer, but are there any environmental or health compliance standards for castor oil production in Canada or requirements for pharmaceuticals and health products? I'm assuming there are requirements for pharmaceuticals and health products.
I would say yes. We'd probably have to answer that offline because that's not really, we don't deal with the health products so much. It's food-based is what the perennial specialists do for the most part. But yeah, we can find you some links.
Yeah, and if you are processing nutraceuticals or natural health products, then you have to follow the natural health product regulations.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, here's another question. I did control plan that meets CFIA, but our customers are now asking for a GFSI certification. Is the preventive control plan for CFIA good enough for the GFSI, or do you need to create another one?
It's a great start, but you're going to have to really kind of look at the standard and do a gap assessment and compare what they're asking for in the standard that you choose or what the retailer has specified. Sometimes they do specify. They're not supposed to really, because most HACCP-based audits or GFSI audits are all the same, have similar requirements. They're all benchmarked. But some people do. Some of the retailers do kind of specify SQF over another or BRCGS. But take a look and look at the standard and then look at your program and just identify those gaps and determine what you need to add.
Another thing to keep in mind is we get this question too, or folks that are just starting off think they need to be running a regulatory food safety program and then a third-party certification program, and that is not the case at all, guys. You want to keep these as simple as possible. But if it is a GFSI certification, say SQF, that you're trying to meet, then you're going to write that food safety program so that it meets the SQF requirements, but it also meets your regulatory requirements, whether that's the CFIA or the FDA. So you are running one program at the end of the day that's meeting all of the things. And this way, it's going to be a lot easier for you to maintain, reassess, do those internal audits, and keep that program up to date. Can you imagine running two different programs? People have a difficult time now where they're saying, I wear so many hats at the facility. How do I make the time to do this? If you had to maintain and reassess two different programs, just imagine how much time that would take you. So it's one food safety program meeting all of the different requirements.
Now, if you want to make your life easier, you could create it like a document register, one for CFIA, or you have links, or this is what I need to show CFIA, this is what I need to show my certification body, or even a co-packer customer. So you could do that and put hyperlinks in it. So then when they do show up, you can get them in and out as fast as possible and look like you know what you're doing, at least, or feel like you know what you're doing. I do have clients that have done that, and it really helps. Especially when all these visits and audits are coming in sometimes back to back. It's a lot. And you don't want to be digging through files and trying to find stuff. Sometimes it's easier just to bring that up and just link directly to it.
And there
That's
are
a great tip.
templates that do exist, right? Like Perennia has some templates that you can help you get started at least.
Yeah, we have some records online with our Safe Food for Canadians guides that we've created that will get you started. You do have to modify them. Like we mentioned before, if you don't modify them, they're not going to work for you. That's why we created them. There's down here, Carolyn's shown it here, downloadable forms that you can click and give a go or add to it or modify, just to get you started. Because sometimes the hardest part is getting started. So this will make you feel like, okay, I'm moving the ball, it's rolling, and then it'll maybe inspire you to start picking away at your program and getting compliant.
We have these on our perennia.ca website, along with the guide for Safe Food for Canadians, a bunch of downloadable Excel forms, some companion documents, and then we also have them on our Perennia Academy. I just wanted to show that as well. So here I'm in quality and food safety and I clicked off Safe Food for Canadians and a bunch of things came up. So they're in both places. And these ones you can save to your account and keep them there so you don't lose them necessarily. So we have these available for sure.
Yeah, so sign up for the academy, make your profile, you can save your resources. If you would prefer to have a hard copy, let us know, because we do have some limited amounts in print, and we definitely don't mind sending that out.
Yeah.
Or if you have trouble locating them, let us know, we'll walk you through it.
And for the Excel templates, like you said, you can customize them for your needs, because the template is just that, it's a template, but they will definitely need to be, updated and customized for your facility, your product, all those things. All right, I shared the link in the chat as well, and we still have a bit of time, so if someone has more questions, please send them in. One sec. So when developing and implementing a food safety program, what are some common misconceptions, myths, and what do people believe about them?
That it's difficult, and that it's hard, and that it's daunting. And getting started, I mean, yeah, it can be a daunting task, but it doesn't have to be. So like Elaine said, she enjoys maintenance. So she starts with the maintenance department and going through and looking at what equipment they have and what's the frequency of maintaining this piece of equipment and how often, or sorry, not how often, I just said that with the frequency, but what activities need to be done. Are we greasing things? Are we changing oils? So if you want to start there, that's fine. Having a timeline in mind really helps as well. So like Elaine said, if you think you're going to put together a preventive control program overnight because you've applied for your Safe Food for Canadians and now CFIA is asking you, that's not going to happen. But if you know that, our customers asking them for this, they've given us a 12-month timeline, work on it little by little. Write down what you know, what you're already doing. It definitely does not have to be complicated. And when you share and delegate these tasks and the written programs, whether it's the sanitation or the pest control, it's going to make things a lot easier too for you. So don't try to do it all in one day. Nobody can eat an elephant whole, right? We all know that saying. So it's bit by bit.
I think the other thing to keep in mind of is that look at how many corrective action reports you're writing. And if you have time to do those, which you probably don't anyways, but if you have time to do those, you have time to write a preventive control to control those so they can stop happening. So maybe that's where your focus point is. Maybe you look at your corrective actions and going, okay, we're having a lot of issues with people not wearing hair nets or foreign material reports of hair or metal or whatever. We need to do a deeper dive to see what we need to do to fix this. And it's not always retraining. It might be the fact that the form you created doesn't work, or people don't understand to fill it out, or there's no policy telling people what to do or how to do it. You really got to get out there and interact. with people on the floor or in the field.
And another thing to keep in mind is keep these programs simple. Don't make them more complicated than they have to be. More is not always better. We've seen 20-page SOPs that could have been 3 pages, absolute maximum. So you don't want to be putting in too much information and basically tying your hands together because of all that extra information that's in there that doesn't need to be in there. So you want to put enough information for that consistency between your staff members, as well as enough information so that you're meeting those third-party certification standards or your regulatory requirements. Don't add the fluff.
No, and keep it simple, point form. You know, they always say right at a 7th or 8th grade level. Keep in mind who your audience is. You know, maybe what you do is you go out and do a step-by-step with photos. If you're having issues with people not recording a lot number on an ingredient, take a photo of it. Maybe they don't even know what they're looking at. You know, it might be obvious to you, but not obvious to somebody else. You know, and post it out there so people understand. And people generally want to help you and want to put the correct information down. So photos, videos, you know, change up your training, you know, do little toolbox tailgate talks or whatever on the line, you know, once a week, once a month, whatever works for you, you know, just and communicate. It's really a lot of it's from misunderstanding these issues that happen on the floor. It's just you need the communication.
It goes back to being on the floor and talking with the people you work with and seeing what their needs are as much as they want to know what your needs are. I did a training once. It was a human resources training. And there was someone from a lobster processing facility as part of the training, and they said that their human resources policies, they used to record them over audio because a lot of their staff didn't have a high literacy level, and that just like a light bulb came on for me. I was like, oh yeah, of course, meet people where they're at and they will help you as much as you can help them.
Right. And don't call them out either. Some
No,
people will come to you and say, listen, I'm having trouble comprehending this, but if you show me this 3 times and have me do it, the whole learn to do by doing is huge for a lot of people.
absolutely.
Some people are embarrassed about it, you know. I mean, you just really have to take a step back and then instead of kind of judging, you kind of see like the best thing you can do on a Monday morning in manufacturing or in farming is to go out and just take a giant step back and just watch and interact, and you will learn so much. I learned so much more from people on the floor than I ever have, you know, in courses sometimes. So, you know, just, you know, take that and soak it in.
And you're going to know your staff best. So make it make sense for them. Like you mentioned, Carolyn, if they can't read, you're not going to have them read an SOP. Like Elaine said, you can have pictograms, diagrams, videos. There's so many things you can do other than words on a piece of paper.
Or translated in the language that they need to.
That's a great point.
That's a huge point, and we see a lot of that, you know. You got to make sure you're speaking to them.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, you can do with this is kind of getting into training. But the other thing you can do is if you have a lead hand that's fluent in that language, incorporate them to help interpret while you're trying to train, you know, and this is where the pictures and the video and the showing and then having them do it. I mean, right there, you're doing your effectiveness check, right? With those folks that, you know, you're watching them do it to see if they understand because it could be how you're communicating. So yeah, that's huge.
Awesome, thank you. I'm loving these discussions. We received another question in our Q&A. We have about 11 minutes left. So if you have other questions, please send them in so we have time to answer them. What are some prerequisites for food safety programs? So as a brand new business, probably a smaller business, what are like the prerequisites or requirements for starting a food safety program?
Hygiene.
Hygiene.
Hygiene policy. Do you wear hair nets, or is it a hat that you're wearing at your facility? Do you have smocks? Do you have certain shirts like uniforms? Are they required to wear boots? So starting with the hygiene policy, that's probably where I usually start, whereas Elaine starts with the maintenance. But your prerequisite programs are the things that we discussed. So the hygiene, training of your staff, pest control, sanitation, water quality program, traceability, mock recalls, calibration, maintenance, conditions respecting the establishment, shipping and receiving and storage, all of those things.
And our guides outline all those too and give you tips on what you need to document and how to document. Because there is a proper way to do it. So that'll get you started anyways. Yeah.
And another good resource as well, like Elaine mentioned, you can go to the Perennia website, like Carolyn brought up earlier, and you see all of our free guides and fact sheets and free records, templates. But CFIA also has lots of good information on there when it comes to how to write a water quality program. They list out all the things that they're looking for, or like brittle plastics, the supplier assurance program that Elaine mentioned earlier. So all of these things are also available on the CFIA website.
Yeah, they actually have, I think it's still on there, Shelley, the template for the supplier assurance questions you should be asking your suppliers. Yeah, that's still on there too. And I think we have a link to it on our website, maybe the Academy too. I can't remember. But yeah.
think so. I also wanted to not to plug too much, but we do have, Frenia has a food safety fundamentals series of courses on the Perennia Academy. The link is academy.perennia.ca/courses. And that's a series of 7 courses that are really for like someone beginning their career in food quality or food safety, or someone who wants to start a food and beverage company, not sure what food safety is beyond their food handlers course. It goes further than that. So we do have those courses available, and they're pretty affordable, I will say.
That's another good point, Carolyn, that you just brought up, because I did have that question the other day. Was I have the food safety awareness training through Prenia. Does that work as my food handlers? And they are completely separate. So food handlers are for food establishments and restaurants and food handling, whereas the food safety awareness course is for developing your programs and procedures and policies and HACCP plans.
Excellent, thank you. So could we hire a consultant, like, to write out a program if you are too busy to do so? Could a facility do that?
Yes, you can, but they can't do it without you.
Yeah, that's okay.
This is your time to pick their brains and really collaborate with them to create a program that is very much reflective of what you do and your process and your product. Yeah, you gotta, it's customized. We constantly talk about, people always ask for templates, which is sometimes the easy route. And I've seen some situations where people have used templates and had not changed anything and have failed audits right from the get-go because it's got meat references in it and they're doing potatoes. So, I mean, that's an issue right off the bat.
And another thing to keep in mind is if you are working with a consultant to help you develop and implement your food safety program, and they're not using you and they're not asking questions, that right there should be questioned, because
That's a
the
red flag.
program
Yeah.
needs to be specific to your system and your processes and your facility. So if a consultant can write you a program without ever needing your input, there's a problem.
Yeah, they should be in the facility with you, right?
Absolutely.
Seeing how people are working, what it looks like, what products they're using, everything.
Your consultants should be doing on-sites, should be talking to the people on the floor, talking to the people that's going to be maintaining the program, talking to the person, whether you're a hassle coordinator or an SQF practitioner, whoever that food safety team leader is at your facility.
Yeah, of course.
The program's only going to be as good as the information the person gives the consultant to put in there.
There you go.
Be honest. That's the other thing. I
Yeah.
got to add this, Shelley. It's not what you hope to do, it's what you're actually doing that meets the requirements. So don't put your hopes, dreams, and wishes in it.
Yeah, it's not a wish list.
It's not a wish list. No, no. You definitely have to be realistic when you put the information in your program.
Right. So I think that brings us to the end. I will mention again that if someone has any questions about food safety program development or quality and food safety in general that they think of afterwards, Elaine and Shelly's emails are there in the chat. I'm going to share my screen again with the PowerPoint presentation, and you are welcome to send them that question. We'd love to hear from you. We have lots of resources, lots and lots of courses coming up in the next year. And we offer lots of services. So here's a basic list of some services that the quality and food safety team offers beyond training and beyond webinars and beyond resources. So we do help with assessments, so needs assessment, gap assessments, pre-audit assessments. Elaine and Shelly help with food safety coaching. So there's a list. I'm sure they could elaborate more on what that looks like and what kind of coaching they can help you with. They also help with the development and implementation of food safety systems and food safety programs. So everything that we were talking about, we offer that as a service too. We can help you do that. And internal auditing by certified food safety and quality auditors, so they can help you prepare for audits. Elaine and Shelly, is there anything else you want to add in terms of services that you provide?
I guess if you run into an obstacle, please contact us, reach out.
Yeah.
We do have the technical advice piece for Nova Scotia companies
Yeah.
and producers. So, and I think if you're not on our mailing list, make sure you are, because that was promoted, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to reach out. I'd rather have somebody reach out and ask questions and have us point them in the right direction or kind of get them started than have somebody trying to tread water and just not getting any farther in the process. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like Elaine mentioned, we do, for Nova Scotia producers, we do give technical advice largely for free. So feel free to send in a question, and we will do our very best to answer. We do have some training courses coming up in the next year, 2025 already, if you can believe it. Here is a list of our training courses. You can find them on our website. They do tend to fill up, so I mean, register as soon as you can. If you register 3 or more people of the same company, so say you have, a few people on your food safety team or some new staff members that you want to train, it's a good idea to get it done all at once because we'll give a 10% discount if you do register. And Food and Beverage Atlantic members do get a 25% discount. You can email me and I can direct you in the right direction to get you the coupon code for that.
And I just want to include that this is our training course list, so you're not going to see the free webinars that we're offering
Right.
or the other webinars as well that are up and coming. So in January, we have 3 webinars coming up. We have a webinar on best practices for evaluating your food safety program. We have Safe Food for Canadian regulations, as well as a third-party certification audit webinar as well. So
Yeah.
you can find these by going through our website, but this specific slide here is just for training.
Yeah, we have tons of stuff coming up.
yeah, so
We
check
have some
out the
webinars in
learning.
January. Yeah, lots.
Yeah.
And we
The
do
learning
have
link.
another food safety program, Ask Me Anything webinar coming up. best practices for evaluating your food safety program. So I've added the link to all our training in the chat. And yeah. So, and the recording will be posted on YouTube, and I will send it all to all the participants. Yes.
And this is a funding opportunity for Nova Scotia based head offices based in Nova Scotia. They're eligible to apply for technical support, resources and training and cost shared funding for perennial services. Now, please note the intake period is ending very, very soon. Get your applications in if you're looking to get assistance or take some training.
Yes. Yeah, it ends December 31st. So if you're interested in it, now is the time to send us a message. Because, you know, December, there's lots of folks going on vacation. So that's everything. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Shelly and Elaine, before we go?
No, thank everyone for participating and attending, and hopefully we will see you at the next Ask Us Anything.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.